Good afternoon, folks. It's been several weeks since I've made my last vodcast, so welcome back to the Food for the Faithful channel with me, Bill Reimer, your reluctant prophet. Perhaps more reluctant today than I usually am, because I've been away at the trailer and was unable to comment properly on the martyrdom of renowned Socratic debater and Christian apologist Charlie Kirk. But I believe it's essential that we really understand precisely what's going on, what causes ideological possession, such as we are seeing motivate violent acts. And because without understanding the nature of the ideology that's causing these issues, we're never going to be able to counter them. So these are my thoughts. The death of human empathy is one of the earliest and most telling signs of a culture about to fall into barbarism. Hannah Arendt. Even as the martyrdom of Saint Stephen led to the conversion of the Apostle Paul, who brought Christianity to Europe, Charlie Kirk's martyrdom has ignited a revival in the West that cannot be stopped by those who are ideologically possessed by the satanic delusions of cultural Marxist critical race, gender, and climate catastrophizing theory. Charlie has become a seed that has been planted by his martyrdom and watered by his blood, that will once again rise the tree upon which Christ was crucified for all of mankind to see. Every knee shall bow, and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord to the glory of God the Father. What is the current prevailing nature of the enemy of our souls' lies? How has Satan weaponized Western politics with postmodernism and cultural Marxism? Understanding our earthly enemy's motivations and thought processes are crucial in military and planning. It helps military leaders anticipate their opponents' moves and motives, enabling them to counter their strategies and make informed decisions that mitigate risk. Military leaders must rely on intelligence gathering and analysis to gain insight into their enemy's behavior. So my question to all my fellow conservatives, and particularly to conservative Christians, why is it so many of you appear not to have read or researched what you hope to counter? Why do you rely on your wits and reason alone without knowing the enemy's accepted narrative and beliefs? This is precisely why cancel culture is the final stage of the cultural Marxist revolution that you fail to understand. The final stage of the neo-Marxist revolution is where critics must be silenced by force, up to and including by assassination. If you have not studied your enemy's beliefs, you will never be able to counter them. We are fighting a battle of ideological possession. Critical theory and neo-Marxism shifted focus from class struggle to identity politics. This led to activism centered on race, gender, sexuality, and climate theory, which they see as enforcing ideological conformity. Cancel culture, in this view, is a tool used to silence dissent and enforce these new norms, thus representing a kind of cultural revolution. What is critical theory? Critical theory originated with the Frankfurt School in the early 20th century. Thinkers like Max Horkheimer, Theodor Adorno, and Herbert Marcuse critiqued capitalist societies, culture, and ideology. Their work laid the foundation for later developments in post-structuralism, queer theory, and gender studies. but they themselves did not develop ideas about gender identity in the way we understand it today. Point 2. Key intellectual roots of transgender thought. The development of ideas around gender identity and transgender experiences draws from several intellectual traditions. Simone de Beauvoir, in 1949, in The Second Sex, she famously wrote, "One is not born, but rather becomes a woman," introducing the idea that gender is socially constructed. Judith Butler, in 1990, in Gender Trouble, Butler, a philosopher influenced by post-structuralism and critical theory, argued that gender is performative, not something one is, but something one does. This is a cornerstone of queer theory, which is often linked to critical theory. Michel Foucault, his work on the history of sexuality and power-knowledge dynamics influenced how scholars understand the social construction of identity, including gender and sexuality. This is a guy, by the way, that had sex with little boys in graveyards. There's nothing creepy about that. Sandy Stone, often credited as founder of transgender studies, Stone's 1987 essay, The Empire Strikes Back, a post-transsexual manifesto, challenged medicalized and binary views of trans identity. And number 3, critical theory and transgender ideology. Critical theory influenced the academic and philosophical frameworks, especially through queer theory and gender studies, that helped articulate and legitimize transgender experiences in scholarly and activist contexts. Yet most of you have never read a single article or listened to a lecture on postmodern cultural relativism and cultural Marxist critical race, gender, and climate catastrophizing theory. Without understanding these idea pathogens, you will never be able to defeat ideological possession. And here I am writing about the most renowned of conservative voices who think they can defeat an ideology which rejects Enlightenment values based upon reasoned debate as bourgeois and oppressive. The New Left rejects open debate as a tool of oppressive power. Yes, they believe that communication itself is merely a power struggle for control and dominance. We need to force them to eat the inconsistencies in their own arguments by using their words against them. So if you don't know what their words are, you can't debate with them. Well, you can't debate with them, period. All you can do is deconstruct the lies they're telling. We must make the consequences of all forms of social collectivism so hideous that no one would dream of repeating these experiments of social engineering of humanity. Charlie Kirk was a living embodiment of a life lived by Enlightenment values forged with Christian apologetics. Postmodernism and critical theory exist for the express purpose of dividing and conquering every decent Christian principle and value. The university was born as a Christian institution. Since the Dons believed in a God of moral order and structure, they also believed in the inquiry of natural processes, expecting to discover universal laws by which God himself has arranged the universe, arranged reality. That's why these people constantly try to deconstruct reality. Postmodernism and cultural Marxist critical theory are satanic examples of one socially constructed scream of, "Hath God said?" I find it remarkable that those in charge of the investigation of Charlie Kirk's assassination speak of the need for tolerance and open discourse toward differences in political opinions. However, Charlie's murder has little to do with politics. Politics exists far downstream of ideological beliefs. If one holds beliefs that reject Enlightenment values to the point where speech itself becomes a crime, then this is not merely a political issue. It is both philosophical and indeed religious. Let me be clear. Postmodernism and cultural Marxism are not merely ideologies. Rather, they are religions that label their opponents as heretics who must be silenced. Ask yourselves, when has social collectivism not become murderous? Whether we are to discuss National Socialism or Nazism, fascism or Marxism, or postmodernism or cultural Marxism, they all share the same DNA at their heart, namely blind conformity of opinion. I honestly do not know how it would be possible to have a debate with someone who intends to silence their ideological opponents by labeling reasoned discourse as hateful. Next subtitle, What Most Fail to Understand About Why the Postmodern Left Refuses to Debate. Postmodernism is largely a reaction against the intellectual assumptions and values of the Enlightenment period in the history of Western philosophy, roughly from the 17th through to the 19th centuries. Indeed, many of the doctrines characteristically associated with postmodernism can be fairly described as the straightforward denial of general philosophical viewpoints that were taken for granted during the 18th century Enlightenment, though they were not unique to that period alone. The most important of these viewpoints are the following. Number one, that there is an objective reality, natural reality, a reality whose existence and properties are logically independent of human beings, of their minds, their societies, their social practices, or their investigative techniques. Postmodernists dismiss this idea as a kind of naive realism. Such reality as there is, according to the postmodernists, is a conceptual construct, an artifact of scientific practice and language. This point also applies to the investigation of past events by historians and to the description of social institutions, structures, or practices by social scientists. 2. The descriptive and explanatory statements of scientists and historians can, in principle, be objectively true or false. The postmodern denial of this viewpoint, which follows from the rejection of an objective natural reality, is sometimes expressed by saying, there's no such thing as truth. 3. Through the use of logic and reason, and with the more specialized tools provided by science and technology, human beings are likely to change themselves and their societies for the better. It is reasonable to expect that future societies will be more humane, more just, more enlightened, and more prosperous than they are now. Postmodernists deny this Enlightenment faith in science and technology as instruments of human progress. Indeed, many postmodernists hold the misguided or unguided pursuit of scientific and technical knowledge, led to the development of technologies for killing on a massive scale during World War II. Some go so far as to say that science and technology, and even reason and logic, are inherently destructive and oppressive because they have been used by evil people, especially during the 20th century, to destroy and oppress others. When students and graduates of universities, whose dons preach such illogical drivel, seek to silence others, we ought not to wonder why they would rage against reason. Rather, we should ask how they have come to believe what they accept as truth. The Enlightenment was based upon factual evidence and objective reality, whilst postmodernism rejects the very existence of objective reality as in reason-based discourse. Why should we wonder then given the prevalence of this hideous ideology, how the West has descended into murderous violence. Why should we? Postmodernism and critical theory are the very ideologies responsible for Charlie Kirk's death. Worse, the kid responsible for Charlie's murder was indoctrinated by his university to believe that his actions were justified. Understand this. His ideologically possessed professors pulled that trigger right along with him. Do you realize all these labels are merely constructed terms invented by the radical left with the same purpose of deconstructing normality, the nuclear family, and Christianity? The people who invented this postmodern literary deconstruction of reality literally have stated this in their own literature. That's why you must read it. It may not be pleasant. I can assure you it isn't. It disgusts me. But it's necessary for us to understand. If someone states that their agenda involves deconstructing everything upon which civil society depends, is built upon, believe them. Socrates' philosophical method, which involved publicly questioning people and exposing their ignorance, embarrassed influential Athenians and created animosity toward him. He drank hemlock rather than abandoning his moral compass to the Athenians' delusions. Charlie died for the same reason. He knew he was a target of the left's hatred, but countered their unreason with Socratic debate. These ideologically possessed, useful fools and tools of cultural Marxism are ready, willing, and able to murder all who disagree with their perverse agenda, all in the name of progressivism. My life is dedicated to exposing the nature and the source of these demonic lies. Yes, Charlie Kirk was the living embodiment of a life lived by Enlightenment values, forged with a Christian apologetics. They martyred Charlie. Now they will be coming for us as well. Ideological delusions must be eradicated, starting with the university professors who have corrupted our youth. These are things to think and pray about on this September the 16th. God bless you all. Fight the good fight. Put on the full armor of God. God bless you.